Shalom, I'd like to give all glory, praise, and honor to Adonai Yahweh, Bashem Shabbat Yahshua, Bashem Rakadash, the honor to the Apostle Elsewhere Millstone, peace, citation, hopeful elect, Shalom. And I'm just going to jump straight into this article right here and bring up some scriptures. And this says by news.com, China says U.S. will perish by fire after Congress releases war strategy report. By Dave Malyon, 18 hours ago, says 2 minutes and 50 seconds. That's basically the read time of the article. Says China has responded to recent U.S. report that raises the possibility of simultaneous wars against Moscow and Beijing. .com has learned that in response, the Asian nuclear superpower cautioned Washington that those who play with fire will perish by it. U.S. and Chinese relations are tense. It says this warning comes in response to a 145-page report released by the Congressional Commission is on strategic posture of the United States, which states that the U.S. is ill-prepared to face the growing nuclear threat posed by Russia and China. And quote, it is an existential challenge for which the United States is ill-prepared unless its leaders make decisions now, the report notes. The report describes the behavior of both Russia and China as militarily troubling and increasingly aggressive, which in turn has elevated the risk of conflict with two nuclear pairs per DNYUZ. It then predicts that China will achieve nuclear parity with the U.S. by the mid-2030s. In exploring a potential worst-case scenario, the report focuses on the idea of a coalition between Russia and China against the U.S., prompting the experts to recommend a change in the country's strategic posture and an increase in military modernization. It says the prospect of a possible war with the U.S. has evoked anger and resentment in Beijing. The Global Times, the official newspaper of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, recently published an article expressing these sentiments, stating, and quote, the idea of preparing for possible simultaneous wars with Russia and China once a fringe fantasy has gradually made its way into Washington's agenda, which is deeply unsettling via DNYUZ. The article further warned that if the U.S. were to adopt even a small portion of the recommendations in the report, it could pose immeasurable harm and threats to world peace, ultimately backfiring on the U.S. itself. It quotes an old Chinese saying, and quote, those who play with fire will perish by it, urging Washington to carefully consider the consequences of its actions. The article criticizes bipartisan report as reckless for promoting a nuclear arms race under the banner of deterrence, describing it as a disastrous step backward in history, and then accuses the report of exaggerating the threat posed by China. China's warnings the U.S. is not the first. The tensions between the two countries have escalated due to China's drawing ire from the U.S. through its strengthening relationship with Russia despite the superpower invasion of Ukraine. The U.S. in turn has been showing allegiance to Taiwan, causing Beijing to become increasingly aggressive toward the island country and non-receptive to Biden's administration. The diplomatic overtures. As a testimony to the latter, in September, the Global Times published an op-ed article warning the U.S. about its support for Taiwan, arguing that the U.S. actions may incite tensions and potentially lead to a conflict between China and the U.S. Wow. And another thing too is like U.S. already owes so much debt to China, so they're just further exacerbating situations. And honestly speaking, it's biblical prophecy anyway that America is going to be destroyed, and that how all nations is going to turn against America. That's pretty much the reason why you see the BRICS alliance. But without further ado, I'll get into scriptures and Lord will make this lesson edifying. And pretty much what China was saying about the U.S. for releasing its strategy report, it corresponds with Jeremiah 50 and 51, how the U.S. pretty much is going to fall by thermonuclear destruction, and all the nations around about is basically going to turn against America, aka Babylon the Great. So Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 13 says, because of the wrath of the Lord it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Everyone that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished and hiss at all her plagues. Put yourself in array against Babylon round about, O ye that bend the bow. Shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she hath sinned against the Lord. Shout against her round about. She hath given her hand, her foundations are fallen, her walls are thrown down. It is the vengeance of the Lord. Take vengeance upon her, as she hath done, do unto her. Cut off the sword from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest, for fear of the oppressing sword. They shall turn every one to his people, and they shall flee every one to his own land. In Jeremiah 51 verse 1 says, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will raise up against Babylon, against them that dwell in the midst of them, that rise up against me a destroying wind, and will send upon Babylon fanners that shall fan her, and shall empty her land. For in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. Against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow, and against him that lifteth himself up in the briganded, and spare ye not her young men. Destroy ye utterly all her hosts. Thus the Lord, thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, and they that are thrust through in her streets. Verse 8 says, verse 7 says, Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, let us go every one into his own country, for our judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. And verse 11, make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes, for his devices against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple. And basically the Medes represent the Russians. In that article that was mentioned about how the U.S. were pretty much die by fire, and that was a spiritual thing that trying to mention in the article, because it really goes, according to the scriptures. And there's a lot of scripture I'll bring out because I don't want to make lesson too long, so straight to the point. 2 Ezra chapter 16 verse 13, for strong is his right hand that bendeth the bow. His arrows that he shooteth are sharp, and shall not miss, when they begin to be shot into the ends of the world. And the Lord is going to put the spirit upon these heathens to make sure that those missiles are going to be, guided mainly into the land of America. And it tells in Revelation that it's 200,000 upon 1,000, which is represents 200 million missiles. And the scripture saying 2 Peter that how the elements shall melt with fervent heat. So that right there is already biblical prophecy that's yet to be fulfilled. But with that, who may let's edify, let's go over praise the Father to Adonai Yahweh Bashem Shabbat Yahweh Shabbat Shabbat the long as Apostle Elsker Milestone, peace and teaching for Shalom.